The year is 1942. America is at war, and its recruiting offices are flooded with young men eager to serve. In Dallas, Texas, one such boy steps forward. He is small, barely 5 feet, 5 inches tall, and weighs a mere 110 pounds. His face is youthful, almost boyish. He tries to join the Marines, but they turn him away. Too small. He tries the Navy and the paratroopers. They, too, reject him. Underweight, too slight for the rigors of combat. Yet this boy, dismissed by 3 branches of the armed forces, would go on to receive every combat award for valor his country could bestow, becoming the most decorated American soldier of the Second World War. His story is not one of inherent greatness, but of a resolve forged in the harshest of crucibles. To understand the soldier, one must first understand the boy who simply would not quit. His name was Audie Murphy, born June 20th, 1925, into a family of Irish sharecroppers in the Blackland soil of Hunt County, Texas. His childhood was not one of idyllic country life, but a relentless struggle for survival defined by the Great Depression and extreme poverty. In his own words, to say that the family was poor would be an understatement. Poverty dogged our every step. He was one of 12 children, 9 of whom survived infancy, and the family lived in a constant state of turmoil. His father, Audie Murphy, was an inconsistent presence, drifting in and out of their lives until he finally abandoned them altogether. The full weight of the family's survival fell on his mother, Josie. The struggle was all-consuming. As he later wrote, "As soon as we were old enough to handle a plow, an axe, or a hoe, we were thrown into the struggle for existence. School was a luxury the family could not afford." Audie dropped out in the 5th grade to chop cotton for $1 a day, his meager earnings essential to keeping the family afloat. But it was another skill, born of that same desperate necessity, that would unknowingly prepare him for the battlefields of Europe. He became an expert marksman, not on a firing range but in the woods and fields around his home. For most boys, a rifle was a tool for sport. For Audie Murphy, it was the instrument of survival. Every shot had to count, not for a score, but for a rabbit or squirrel to put food on the family table. This was not training, it was existence, and in that unforgiving environment, a marksman of uncanny skill was being forged. The final pillars of his childhood collapsed when he was a teenager. In 1941, his mother, the anchor of the family, died from illness. At 16, Audie was effectively an orphan, left with the immense responsibility of his younger siblings. The burden was too great, and Hunt County authorities placed his 3 youngest siblings into an orphanage, a painful separation that would weigh on him for years. He found work where he could, in a radio repair shop and a local garage, but he dreamed of a way out, a path to a life with purpose. That path appeared on December 7, 1941. The attack on Pearl Harbor galvanized the nation, and for Audie Murphy, it was a call to action. The military promised an escape from the grinding poverty that had defined his entire life. But his youthful appearance and slight frame became his first adversaries. He was still only 16, underweight and underage. Undeterred, he waited, and after his 17th birthday, his older sister Corinne helped him falsify his birth certificate, adding a year to his age to meet the minimum requirement for enlistment. Even with the altered documents, his physical appearance was a constant obstacle. The repeated rejections from the Marines, Navy, and paratroopers were disheartening, but his resolve never wavered. Finally, on June 30th, 1942, the U.S. Army accepted him. Yet the battle against perception continued. During basic training at Camp Walters, Texas, his slight build was so conspicuous that his company commander, likely with good intentions, tried to have him transferred to a cook and baker's school, believing he was not cut out for the infantry. Murphy refused. He had not fought so hard to enlist only to be relegated to the rear lines. He insisted on becoming a combat soldier. This recurring theme of underestimation would follow him across the Atlantic. In North Africa, his new company commander, seeing his thin frame and cursed baby face, tried to make him a runner, a job to keep him away from the front. But Audie Murphy was determined to fight, and soon the war would give him his chance. Having fought for the right to fight, Private Audie Murphy and the 3rd Infantry Division were about to be thrown into their first major European test. The island of Sicily would be their proving ground, a place where boyhood fantasies of war would collide with its brutal, unforgiving reality. After completing basic training at Camp Walters and advanced infantry training at Fort Meade, Maryland, Audie Murphy was assigned to Company B, 1st Battalion, 15th Infantry Regiment. This was no ordinary unit. It was part of the 3rd Infantry Division, a storied outfit that had earned the moniker Rock of the Marne for its unyielding defense in the First World War. On February 20, 1943, Murphy arrived in Casablanca, French Morocco, and was plunged into the division's famously rigorous training regimen under the command of Major General Lucien K. Truscott. Truscott was a demanding leader who prepared his men for the harsh realities of combat with grueling exercises, including the Truscott Trot, a punishing 30-mile march completed in just 8 hours. The division was being hardened for Operation Husky, the Allied invasion of Sicily. On July 10, 1943, the 3rd Division stormed the beaches near Licata. For Murphy, the landing was an anticlimax, a chaotic introduction to the logistical snarls of war. As he later wrote, "The timing got snarled in the pre-dawn confusion, and we came in late, chugging ashore like a bunch of clucks in a ferry boat." By the time his boat hit the beach, the main assault troops had already moved inland. This initial experience was the first of many moments that would strip away his youthful, romanticized notions of combat. As a boy in Texas, he had imagined war as a grand adventure, a world of bugles and banners, where heroes charged gallantly across flaming hills. The reality he found in the Sicilian countryside was starkly different. It was a world of blistered feet and a growling stomach, of oppressive heat and the constant gnawing fear of an unseen enemy. The glamour he had envisioned was nowhere to be found. The brutal, impersonal nature of modern warfare revealed itself on his very first day. While taking a brief rest, a mortar shell struck nearby, killing a young soldier sitting on a rock just a few feet away. The suddenness of it was shocking. "1 minute you're sitting on a rock," he would later reflect. "The next minute, you're dead." This was not the heroic duel he had imagined. This was arbitrary, mechanical death. The experience profoundly shaped his perspective. After a skirmish where he shot 2 fleeing Italian officers from their horses, he felt a chilling detachment. "Now I have shed my first blood," he wrote. "I feel no qualms, no pride, no remorse. There is only a weary indifference that will follow me throughout the war." This was not the voice of a man who loved to fight, but of a man who understood the grim necessity of his work and was determined to do it well. His superiors, however, were still fixated on his appearance. His baby face led his company commander to assign him as a runner, a role intended to keep him off the front lines. But Murphy refused to be sidelined. He repeatedly snuck away to join patrols and scouting missions, determined to be where the action was. His persistence, combined with the skills he had honed in the Texas backwoods, quickly became impossible to ignore. His proficiency as a marksman and his innate understanding of small unit tactics were undeniable. His resilience was tested further when he contracted malaria near Palermo. Despite the debilitating illness, he insisted on returning to his unit as soon as he could, rejoining them for the remainder of the brutal Sicilian campaign. The combination of his battlefield performance and the high rate of attrition among officers and non-commissioned officers led to a swift ascent through the ranks. His promotions were a testament to his rapid adaptation to the pressures of combat. He was promoted to Private First Class on May 7, 1943, even before the invasion, and then to Corporal on July 15, just 5 days after landing on Sicily. The boy, who had been deemed too small to fight, was quickly proving to be an indispensable soldier. Sicily had taken the vinegar out of his spirit, as he put it, but it had also revealed the steel beneath. The Sicilian campaign was over, but for Audie Murphy and the 3rd Infantry Division, the war was just beginning. Ahead lay the Italian mainland, a landscape that would become, in the words of the division's own history, the bitterest, most heartbreaking, most cursed battlefield of the longest-fought campaign in Europe. In September 1943, the 3rd Infantry Division landed at Salerno as part of the Allied invasion of mainland Italy. What awaited them was a brutal, grinding campaign against a determined and skillful enemy. The Italian terrain itself was a formidable foe, a treacherous landscape of rugged mountains, thick mud, and unpredictable weather that tested the limits of every soldier. The advance was measured in yards, paid for with blood. A month after the Salerno landing, in October, Murphy's unit was fighting its way to the formidable German defenses along the Volturno River. It was here, during a scouting patrol, that his aggressive bravery became evident. Ambushed by German machine gun fire, one of his comrades was killed instantly. Murphy and the other survivor didn't retreat, they attacked. Using hand grenades and machine gun fire, they eliminated the 5-man German position. This decisive action and others like it earned him the respect of his men and his superiors. By December 13, 1943, he was promoted to sergeant. The fighting intensified as the Allies pushed north. In January 1944, Murphy was promoted again to staff sergeant, but his advance was temporarily halted by a second bout of malaria. The illness kept him out of the initial landings at Anzio, a daring amphibious assault intended to break the stalemate at Cassino. But the Anzio beachhead quickly turned into a death trap, a 4-month battle of attrition where Allied forces were pinned down by furious German counterattacks. Murphy returned to this cauldron at the end of January. It was in the desperate confines of the Anzio beachhead that Murphy's development from a skilled rifleman into a tactical leader became clear. The action that earned him his first medal for valor, the Bronze Star with V device, was not just an act of raw courage, but a calculated solution to a tactical problem. On the night of March 2, 1944, a disabled German tank was blocking a strategic road, threatening the American lines. If the Germans recovered it, they could reopen a critical avenue of attack. Murphy was tasked with destroying it. Under the cover of darkness, he led a small patrol towards the tank. Ordering his men to provide cover, he crept alone across 100 yards of flat, open terrain, closing to within 50 yards of the enemy vehicle. He took careful aim and fired several rifle grenades, scoring direct hits that completely destroyed the tank. As the explosions erupted, the entire sector came alive with German machine gun fire. With tracers cutting through the darkness, Murphy coolly led his men through the bullet-swept area and back to safety. This was a marked evolution. In Sicily, he had been a superb soldier reacting to immediate threats. At Anzio, as a platoon sergeant, he was proactively solving complex challenges. The mission required stealth, nerve, and proficiency with specialized weapons, all executed under extreme pressure. He was demonstrating an ability to think several steps ahead, understanding the strategic importance of denying an asset to the enemy. He was becoming a leader. But the relentless combat took a severe psychological toll. The Anzio beachhead was a place of constant shelling and death, a landscape so grim it inspired Murphy to poetry. The verses he penned captured the despair of the campaign. "Oh, gather round me, comrades, and listen while I speak. Of a war, a war, a war where hell is 6 feet deep. That death awaits, there's no debate, no triumph will we reap. The crosses grow on Anzio, where hell is 6 feet deep." These haunting words offer a glimpse into the mind of the young soldier, a stark reminder that behind the growing list of decorations was a man grappling with the profound cost of the war he was fighting so effectively. Italy was forging him into a legendary soldier, but it was also leaving indelible scars. After the liberation of Rome, the 3rd Infantry Division was withdrawn from Italy to prepare for its next major operation. Audie Murphy, now a seasoned veteran at the age of 19, was about to enter a new phase of the war in southern France, where his individual acts of valor would become so frequent and so extraordinary, they formed a pattern of heroism that defied belief. On August 15, 1944, Audie Murphy participated in his second amphibious invasion, Operation Dragoon, the other D-Day in southern France. As staff sergeant, he led his platoon ashore on Yellow Beach near Ramatuelle. The landing was, in his words, a perfect landing from a technical standpoint, with naval and air bombardment suppressing much of the initial resistance. But the beach was still a treacherous landscape of mines and sporadic artillery fire. Shortly after moving inland, his unit faced a formidable obstacle: a heavily fortified, boulder-strewn hill crowned with a concrete pillbox, which the men dubbed Pillbox Hill. As B Company began its assault, it was immediately pinned down by intense machine gun and small arms fire. The advance stalled. Without hesitation, Murphy ordered his men to take cover and moved forward alone. He located a light machine gun, commandeered it from its pinned-down crew, and advanced on the enemy positions. In a stunning display of individual initiative, he systematically engaged and destroyed multiple German machine gun nests, breaking the stalemate and allowing his company to storm and capture the hill. For this action, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the nation's second-highest award for valor. This was not an isolated incident of bravery. It was the beginning of a clear and astonishing pattern. Throughout the brutal fighting in France, whenever his unit was stopped, Murphy would make a calculated decision to move forward alone, accepting extreme personal risk to create a tactical advantage that would save his men. He was no longer just reacting to the enemy. He was proactively hunting for the linchpin of their defense and breaking it himself. This pattern was starkly illustrated in early October 1944 during the advance through the Vosges Mountains. In the span of just 3 days, he earned 2 silver stars for 2 separate acts of extraordinary heroism. On October 2nd, near the Clury Quarry, a reconnaissance party including his battalion and company commanders was hopelessly pinned down by a hidden German machine gun. Murphy, who had been trailing the group against their advice, single-handedly charged the position. With his carbine and grenades, he killed or wounded the entire 8-man crew, saving his commanders from certain death. 3 days later, on October 5th, his platoon was ambushed and trapped in a dry creek bed, taking heavy casualties. Unable to locate the enemy's well-concealed positions, Murphy took a walkie-talkie and crawled 50 yards forward alone under withering fire. From an exposed forward position, for nearly an hour, he calmly directed mortar fire onto the German defenses. His precise adjustments broke the back of the enemy resistance, killing 15 and wounding 35 more, allowing his platoon to disengage and survive. The sheer density of these actions in such a short period was remarkable. Holtzwihr would become his most famous stand, but it was not an anomaly. It was the ultimate expression of a combat philosophy he had been honing since he first set foot in Europe. Take the initiative, face the danger yourself, and save your men. On October 14, 1944, the Army formally recognized what his men already knew. Audie Murphy was a leader. He received a battlefield commission to second lieutenant, officially making him a platoon leader. The promotion was a validation of his skill and courage, but it also placed the full weight of responsibility for the lives of his men squarely on his young shoulders. It was a burden he would carry into the frozen forests of Alsace and into the greatest test of his life. By January 1945, the war in Europe was in its final, brutal phase. For Second Lieutenant Audie Murphy, now commanding the remnants of B Company, the fight had led him to a snow-covered forest in eastern France. Here, near a small village called Holtzwihr, desperation and duty would converge, setting the stage for one of the most incredible one-man stands in military history. January 1945. The location is the Colmar Pocket, the last major German foothold on French soil. The weather is brutal, with frigid temperatures and a landscape buried in snow. The ground is frozen solid, making the simple act of digging a foxhole for cover a near impossible, exhausting task. It is here, at the edge of a forest known as the Bois de Riedveer, that Second Lieutenant Audie Murphy and what is left of B Company are ordered to make their stand. The strategic situation is critical. The Bois de Riedveer is a piece of key terrain, its possession described by Lieutenant Colonel Keith Ware as being of cardinal importance because it dominated the German-held village of Holzveer, the next objective in the Allied advance. The fighting to secure this ground has already been catastrophic. Just days earlier, another American regiment had been cut to pieces trying to take it, forced to withdraw after suffering devastating losses. Now it is B Company's turn to hold the line. But B Company is a shadow of its former self. A rifle company at full strength should have over 120 enlisted men. After the furious fighting of the preceding days, Murphy has only 18 effective soldiers left under his command. At just 19 years old, he is the only officer remaining, thrust into command of this shattered, exhausted unit. His orders from battalion headquarters are simple and absolute. Hold your position. To bolster his depleted line, Murphy is given support. 2 M10 tank destroyers from the 601st Tank Destroyer Battalion. He positions them astride a narrow dirt road that leads from Holzveer into the woods, knowing any German armor would have to use this approach. He establishes his command post in a shallow drainage ditch just in front of the rear tank destroyer, a field telephone his only link to battalion headquarters a mile away. At 2 p.m. on January 26th, the German attack begins, preceded by a deafening artillery barrage. Emerging from the village and the snow-swept fields are 6 German panzer tanks and an estimated 250 infantrymen clad in white camouflage. These are not conscripts, they are elements of the elite 2nd Mountain Division, highly trained soldiers transferred from Norway specifically for this offensive. Their objective is to smash through Murphy's thin line, seize the road, and sever the 3rd Division's position. The 2 American M10s open fire, but their 3-inch shells bounce harmlessly off the thick frontal armor of the German tanks. The German counterfire is lethally accurate. An 80-mm shell pierces the armor of the rear tank destroyer, killing 2 of its crew and sending the survivors fleeing into the woods. The vehicle begins to burn. The lead M10, while maneuvering for a better firing position, slides off the icy road and into a ditch, its main gun rendered useless. Its crew, now sitting ducks, bail out and retreat. In a matter of minutes, Murphy's situation has become utterly hopeless. His company is outnumbered more than 10 to 1. They have no effective anti-tank weapons. They have no cover. And they are facing an elite enemy force with overwhelming armor support. A tactical noose was tightening around them. To stay would mean annihilation. Murphy makes the only sane command decision possible. He orders his 18 men to fall back to prepared positions deeper in the woods, to a line they can actually defend. But the German advance cannot go unchecked. If they push into the woods, they could roll up the entire regimental flank. The only weapon Murphy has left that can slow them down is artillery, and he is the only one who can direct it. He makes a second decision. As his men withdraw to safety, he remains forward, alone in his ditch with the field telephone, calling in shell fire on the advancing enemy. The German tanks continue to rumble forward, drawing abreast of his position. His carbine ammunition is spent. He looks up and sees the American tank destroyer, abandoned, its hull now engulfed in flames. Alone, outgunned, and with the enemy closing in, Lieutenant Audie Murphy was faced with a choice. In front of him, certain death. Behind him, a burning vehicle packed with fuel and ammunition, a ticking time bomb. What he did next would transcend courage and enter the realm of legend. The air is thick with the roar of engines, the crack of rifles, and the crump of artillery. Smoke from the burning M10 Wolverine tank destroyer billows into the frigid air. For Lieutenant Audie Murphy, there is only one, seemingly suicidal, option left. He scrambles from his ditch and climbs onto the turret of the burning vehicle, fully aware that the flames licking at its hull are just moments away from reaching its fuel tanks and ammunition stores. He swings the vehicle's heavy Tatarn 50 caliber machine gun toward the advancing German infantry. What followed was not a mindless, desperate fusillade, but a masterful display of tactical genius under unimaginable pressure. Murphy fought a two-front battle simultaneously. With one hand on the machine gun, he unleashed devastating bursts of fire into the waves of German infantry. With the other, he clutched the field telephone, calmly and precisely calling in artillery coordinates, walking the shells ever closer to the enemy formation. He understood the fundamental principle of the German assault. The tanks and infantry were a symbiotic force. He used the two weapons at his disposal to systematically sever that connection. The machine gun stripped away the infantry support, while the artillery disrupted the tanks and sowed chaos in their ranks. He was completely alone, a single exposed figure against a winter sky, drawing fire from three sides. He knew the .50 caliber machine gun was ineffective against the Panzer's armor, so he focused his fire on the infantrymen moving alongside them. His aim was deadly. The German infantry attack, the momentum behind the armored thrust, began to waver as dozens of men were cut down. Without their infantry screen, the German tanks became hesitant, their advance slowing to a crawl. The Germans directed every available weapon at the lone figure on the burning tank. Two 80 cm shells slammed into the M10, the concussion throwing Murphy violently against the turret, but he held his position and kept firing. He spotted a German squad attempting to creep up on his right flank and wiped them out. Enemy soldiers got as close as 10 yards, only to be mowed down by his relentless fire. During the intense exchange, he was struck in the leg by shrapnel, a painful wound that he completely ignored. For 1 full hour, the 19-year-old lieutenant held off the entire German attack. He continued to rain fire down on the enemy and direct artillery strikes with chilling accuracy. By the time the German assault broke, he was credited with having personally killed or wounded approximately 50 enemy soldiers. Finally, his ammunition was exhausted. The barrels of the machine gun fell silent. At that same moment, an artillery shell severed his telephone line to the rear. His incredible stand was over. Bleeding and utterly exhausted, Murphy limped and half-crawled off the back of the tank destroyer. Moments later, the vehicle exploded, sending the turret he had just occupied hurtling through the air. He made his way back to his company's position in the woods. He refused medical attention for his wounded leg. The immediate threat had been repelled, but the enemy was still there, disorganized but dangerous. Without a moment's pause, Audie Murphy rallied the 18 survivors of B Company. Seizing the initiative, he personally led them in a ferocious counterattack. The sudden, aggressive charge caught the Germans completely by surprise, forcing them into a full retreat from Holtzwihr. The woods were secured. His company was saved from encirclement and destruction. Wounded, bleeding, and out of ammunition, he had organized a handful of survivors and led them forward back into the fight.